The 363rd edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
And that could make a difference. Lawson at the buzzer. Got it! Maybe not. Ty Lawson wins it at the buzzer.
Deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Gets the roll. Here we go. Page has it. Carolina down one. 84-83. Page into the front court with 4 seconds. Page to the rim. Got it! He got it! 9/10 of a second to go. Inbounds. Washington gets it to Warren. His full court shot. No good. Marcus Page baby. Does it for the Tar Heels. Carolina wins it.
Don't force it if you're Goss.
Comes in. Blocked by Meeks. Buried up ahead to Jackson. And he tucks it down for the 5-point lead. Matthews off the mark. And this year, the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time. Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast here on a Saturday morning, championship Saturday across college basketball. A multitude of conference tournaments will come to an end tonight, and that includes the ACC Tournament when North Carolina meets NC State in the ACC Tournament final, with both of them seeking the automatic berth into the NCAA Tournament. Of course, Carolina has already assured themselves a spot in the big dance. They're fighting for that last number one seed. As for the Wolfpack, they are seeking to become the first team ever to win 5 games in 5 days in the history of the ACC Tournament. We've seen it done in the Big East. Georgetown did it a few years ago. Of course, everybody remembers UConn's magical run in 2011 when they won 5 games in 5 days in the Big East tournament, and then that was followed up by them winning the national championship, winning 11 straight elimination games. And so State's looking to kind of have their own sort of history, historical run 40 years after their run to the NCAA tournament final and national title in 1983. Their theme then was survive and advance. And after their win last night over Virginia in overtime, they've definitely survived and advanced throughout the week up in Washington, D.C. So we're here to break down the championship game matchup. We'll do what we always do whenever we preview a game. We'll tell you everything you need to know about the opponent, look at the game from Carolina's perspective, give our keys to the game, and so much more. But we start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with our pod thought of the day. And I thought this one was very applicable for where Carolina is right now. And it's arguably Woody Durham's most famous, saying and quote during his legendary career as the voice of the Tar Heels, which is simply, go where you go, do what you do. This would typically be uttered in the final, 4 minutes or so of the game in a big spot in a game. And there's no denying that Carolina's in a big spot tonight, a chance to sweep an ACC regular season and a tournament title. We believe that if they win tonight, it will assure themselves that final 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And, our feelings have shifted over the course of the last 3 days. We literally came on here when we previewed the event and said, yeah, we don't want to win the ACC tournament. Let's win 1 game. Let's go home, regroup, recharge, and then make a run at the NCAA tournament. But Duke gets beat. It opens up a pathway for Carolina to get to an ACC tournament final and win it. Of course, now they're there, and now they're meeting a team that we don't like very much, and a team that we would love nothing more than to end their run and dash their hopes of making the NCAA tournament. And the best way for Carolina to do that is go where they go and do what they've done all season long, which is played at such a high level on both ends of the court. And in 2 wins earlier this year, that led to wins over NC State. So it's going to be a special scene tonight. It's going to be a fun night. And as long as Carolina goes where they go and do what they do, buddy, I think we'll like the result about 10:30, 10:45 later this evening.
Yeah, well, the thing is that, we said we didn't, I think it was more we weren't going to be devastated if Carolina did lose. And then the thing is that, I mean, Florida State, you never want to lose the first game that you play. I heard this stat yesterday, and Jay Billis brought it up on Carolina's broadcast, and I forget who said it. It was somebody during one of the conference tournament games brought this up, that when teams that have lost the first game that they play in their conference tournament have never won a national championship. So you didn't want to lose that game. Then you have to play Pitt, a team that now has, I mean, they have fostered some sort of deep hate for you based on their coaching staff, that one guy just feels slighted for some reason. The other guy played at Duke. So, you want to beat them. And now you're in the final against NC State, a team that, you've dominated for so many years, but a team that, when you talk about fostering hate, I mean, there's no team that hates you more. And, for Carolina fans, of course you want to win this game, because we've said it plenty of times before. And look, there's been NC State teams that have definitely been very hateable for Carolina fans, but it's more so the rivalry between the fan base more than anything. And I'm going to tell you what, man, they are talking. I mean, they actually believe, they think Houston, being one of the best teams in the country, if not the best team in the country, they are starting to believe that this is the magical run for them to win a national title, which is just laughable. And so this is a chance for Carolina to end all hope, because, I mean, look, we can agree, right? This has been an amazing run. If State loses tonight, if Carolina beats them, they're not making the tournament. Like, I know their resume is not good enough. So this is a chance for Carolina to crush all those hopes yet again, something that it feels like Carolina has been very, very good at doing here in the last few decades. And so I'm pumped, man. I think this is going to be an amazing matchup. I think both fan bases are going to be cranked. We saw it last night. There are a lot of State fans that are in Washington, D.C. The more have started trickling in since they've started seeing them win these games. And so it's going to be a raucous environment. There's going to be, we've seen it on the floor between these two teams. Even the last time that they met, there's not going to be a lot of respect between the two sides. And so it's going to be fiery in so many different ways.
Yeah, look, there's no way State makes the field if they lose tonight. I'm watching Inside College Basketball as we speak. They're nowhere to be found on the bubble, despite 4 wins. And, I mean, 2 solid wins, the one over Duke, and then last night the win over Virginia. And rightfully so. Like, when you go under 500 in the regular season in conference play, you don't really have a marquee win to speak of. You're not a tournament team. But that's what we love about college, and that's what we love about college basketball is this time of the year. It allows teams to do something special. We just hope that their run runs out of gas tonight, and they fall short against Carolina. So looking at this game from State's perspective, they'll enter tonight with a 21-14 record. But as I mentioned, they were 9-11 in ACC play in the regular season, and that this run followed a 4-game losing streak to end the regular season, and so State didn't show up playing great. They just literally gotten hot and they've rode it, and they've ridden it all the way to the final tonight. They got there of course, they beat Virginia last night in overtime. It felt like when State hit the 3 to tie it, to send it to overtime, it felt inevitable. But yet, and something that, we'll probably document more on Monday, assuming Virginia misses the field, which right now they're projected to, an epic choke job by Virginia.
Which has become the theme of that team the last few years.
Yep. This is a team that hasn't won a tournament game since they won the national title in 2019. And there's a very good chance with how they lost last night and with the loss last night, they won't even find themselves playing in the NCAA tournament. As I mentioned, the Pack are looking to become the first team to ever win 5 games in 5 days. Duke was the first team to ever win 4 games in 4 days. So
lovely.
We would, we would not want to see our 2 Tobacco Road rivals, have that kind of history in the ACC tournament. State's looking for their first ACC tournament title since 1987. And of course, that would result in the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. They have 4 players that average double-figure scoring, led by DJ Horn, 16.5 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, 2.1 assists. He's shooting 44% from the field, 42% from 3. DJ Burns, second on the team in scoring, 12.2 points, 4 rebounds, 2.6 assists. He's shooting 51% from the field. Jaden Taylor also averages 12.2 points, 3.9 rebounds, 1.4 assists. He shoots 42% from the field, 37% from 3. And then Casey Morsell, 11.6 points, 2.8 rebounds, 1.7 assists. He's shooting 41% from the field, 26% from 3. And as a team, they average 7.5 steals per game and force over 12 turnovers per game. And look, we went over their quartet of guys that average double-figure scoring, but there are some other guys that have really made an impact and really helped this team go on this run. You look at Mohamed Diarra, and then you look at Ben Middlebrooks. Like, State isn't where they are without those 2 guys. They allow DJ Burns to sit for an extensive period of time because he's not conditioned to play 28, 34, anywhere from 28 to 34 minutes. And that wasn't the case at the beginning of the year. You go back the first matchup, those guys hadn't really carved out their role. And Carolina was able to beat State the first time because they wore Burns down. The second matchup, those guys had really started to emerge and become the players that they have become now. It made life difficult for Carolina for the first 20 some odd minutes. So, State's got their quartet of double-figure scorers, but their role players have really grown into their roles. And if you go back to the broadcast against Duke the other night, something they kept referencing was John Shire knew this wasn't the same Duke team that Duke saw 10 days before they lost to him in the quarterfinals.
Same State team, yeah.
Yeah, the same State team, which means that this isn't the same State team that Carolina saw a little over 2 weeks ago. And Carolina's going to have their hands full tonight. This might be a team that's playing their 5th game in 5 days. They might be running out of gas, but at this point, there isn't a team in college basketball that believes fate and destiny is on their side more than NC State, and Carolina's going to have to combat that against a team that's playing really, really well right now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you brought up Diarra, you brought up Middlebrooks, but Michael O'Connell, too, is a guy that's kind of – I mean, look, he was playing for them, but he was not scoring the way that he is now. And it's just a team that looks – when we saw them in the Smith Center, they were a team that looked at times, especially in that second half, lifeless. They looked like a team that knew their coach was getting fired, or in their mind probably that he was getting fired. I mean, their athletic director came out and said, look, we don't have enough money basically to fire him. But there wasn't the same level of effort that we had seen at times in the past from NC State. And you knew when Carolina came out in that second half, punched them in the mouth, this was a team that just wasn't able to respond. This team, I mean, in the ACC tournament, there have been multiple times where State could have rolled over. I mean, you go back to the first game that they played, against Louisville. You don't have DJ Horn, and Louisville was, playing really hard for their coach, Kenny Payne. They knew he was going to get fired, but at the same time, they wanted to go out and at least, pick him up another win before he headed out. But, they had stayed on the ropes a couple of different times. And so after that game, we thought, okay, there is no way that this team is actually making a run. But I thought you really saw it in that second half against Syracuse, where State started to believe that this could actually happen. And then, I think that the comments from Jim Boeheim, I don't know why he was slipping my mind there. I think that really sort of started to motivate them as well when he said, what are you actually cheering for? And it seems like this team has said, well, we'll give you something that we're cheering for. So it's definitely been an amazing run. The thing is that Carolina should not be caught off guard by the way that this team is playing, because yes, this is a different team than they saw last time. But at the same time, those guys, Mohamed Diarra and Ben Middlebrooks, both those guys played pretty well in the most recent matchup that Carolina had against them, especially, in that first half and on the glass. Both of those guys, especially Middlebrooks, had a good amount of offensive rebounds in that game. So for Carolina, this shouldn't be shocking. They know that they're going to get their best from State. And so, it's just about being prepared, because this is a team right now that's feeling themselves. They feel like they're a team of destiny, but Carolina also feels really good about where they're at. And that's what's going to make this such an interesting clash.
Yeah, look, Carolina will take the game personal. They'd love to end their rivals' run and keep them out of the tournament, but also this is a motivated group. This is a group that values winning an ACC tournament. It's evident in the way that they've played the first two games. For guys that are all about legacy, you sweep an ACC regular season title and then you add a tournament title to go with it. It's going to go a long way for Armando Bacot and RJ, as they've led Carolina to not a historic season, but just a fun season that has reestablished Carolina as the premier program in the conference and the premier program in college basketball. Looking at this game from Carolina's perspective, they'll bring with them a 27-6 record. They were 17-3 against the ACC in the regular season. With that, a sweep of State. They won in Raleigh. They won in Chapel Hill. Carolina made the final after they beat Pittsburgh last night in the semis, 72-65, and a game that was as physical as we thought it was going to be. And Carolina proved to be the tougher team once again in that matchup. This is the first time Carolina's played in the tournament final since 2018. They lost to Virginia that in that year. The last time Carolina won the tournament was in 2016. That was against Virginia in the same building that tonight's game will be played. I mentioned this last night, but was going to reiterate this. This is the 36th ACC tournament final that Carolina has played in. This is the 71st year of the ACC tournament. So they've literally played in over half of the ACC tournament finals. They're 18-17 in their previous 35 appearances in the championship game. This is the seventh time that Carolina and State have met in the ACC tournament final. The second most matchups of all time, of course, behind Duke and Carolina, who have met in the ACC tournament final 13 times. The last time these two teams met in the tournament final was in 2007. And also, Carolina was the 1 seed in that event, and NC State was the 10 seed in that event. But back then, you were playing 4 games in 4 days, not 5 games in 5 days, because the league hadn't expanded to 15 teams. Carolina has 4 players that average double-figure scoring, led by R.J. Davis, the ACC Player of the Year, 21.1 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 3.5 assists. He's shooting 43% from the field, 41% from 3. Armando Bacot, second on the team in scoring, 14 points per game, 10 rebounds, 1.6 assists. He's shooting 55% from the field, Harrison Ingram, third on the team in scoring, 12.2 points, 9.2 rebounds, 2.2 assists. He's shooting 43% from the field, 37% from three. And then Cormac Ryan, the last guy to average double figures at 11.3 points, 2.9 rebounds, 1.3 assists. He's shooting 38% from the field, 34% from three. And lastly, Carolina averages 41.2 rebounds per game, the seventh highest total in all of college basketball. We've set the scene for Carolina and NC State. That game will come your way this evening, 8:30 p.m. on ESPN, as the ACC will crown its tournament champion. Coming up next, we'll revisit that second matchup between the two schools in Chapel Hill back in early March. We'll discuss a topic around the game as these two rivals meet in the ACC tournament once again, before we, of course, give our keys to the game and pick the game. But first, we got to play you a quick word from one of our partners.
Hey there, Josh here for the Autograph Fandom app. Want to get rewarded for listening to our show? The team at Autograph, co-founded by Tom Brady, is redefining the fan experience by letting users earn points for the acts of fandom they take every day, like listening to this show. The Autograph Fandom app gives you access to your favorite UNC content in one place and offers rewards like tickets, exclusive merchandise, and much more. You're already listening to our show, but now you can earn points and get rewarded for it. Head over to the Apple App Store and search for Autograph Fandom Rewarded and download it today for free using the referral code HEELTOUGH. Link and code are also in our podcast description.
Welcome back inside the Four Corners podcast, guys. Hanging out with you on a Saturday morning, getting you ready for Carolina and NC State tonight in the ACC tournament final. Let's revisit the last time these two teams met. First Saturday in March, Carolina earned a 79-70 win in Chapel Hill. But remember, this game wasn't easy for the Heels. They were actually down 8 at the break. They were down 10 early in the second half before they held State to a stretch of 16 straight missed field goals. As Carolina really upped the defensive pressure, the intensity, and defended the way that we've seen them defend for the majority of the season. Carolina shot 47% from the field. They were 23 of 27 from the foul line. They won the the rebounding battle 34-31, and destroyed State in the paint 32-20. And if you go back to that game, that was a big game for Harrison Ingram. He scored 22 points in that matchup, the most he's scored during his time at Carolina this season. And Ingram has had a quality all-around tournament with the way that he's defended, the way that he's rebounded. Hasn't had the big scoring night yet, though, for Carolina during their time up in Washington, D.C. And it feels like tonight would be a great time to recreate that success he had against the Wolfpack a little over 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you look at him, you look at Elliot Cadeau, too. 15 points in that game. Did a great job of getting downhill, getting to the basket. And he's coming off a game where he really struggled. Hubert Davis said, look, you're struggling that bad that we're going to have to play Seth Trimble over you. And, Seth Trimble played 24 minutes. He played 20. So there's going to be motivation for him to bounce back. Cormac Ryan, incredibly quiet night, where he's been really thriving these last few games heading in. So, yeah, I think there's a chance that all of those guys are going to be motivated to pick up some of the slack, because R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot, for the most part, they've kind of carried you here, especially last night. So I definitely think that this will be one of those games where scoring-wise you will see other guys want to chip in, and I think they will. I think you'll see Carolina, some of their other their other 3 starters, will have better days today than they've had so far. But yeah, I think Ingram is definitely one of the guys that you're hoping can sort of recreate what he did in that game. He stretched the floor very well in that game. Looked confident with the ball in his hands, and there's been times on the offensive end of the floor. I'm not going to say it's not confident, but it's really just trying to find you have a great look. You're trying to find an even better look by passing the ball. There's times where, for him especially, we've seen when he really settles into a groove, it's hard to slow him down. And so that's what you want to see from him. Elliot Cadeau, it's really all about that attacking mindset. And today, especially, you want to be able to do that, because one of the things that will be really interesting to watch today for Carolina will be how aggressive are they in terms of trying to crank up the pace. Because to me, that would be one of my main focuses if I'm Hubert Davis and these guards, would be let's get out and let's run. Because this is a team that has played 4 games in 4 days already. And once they settle into this game, I mean, again, they've had some guys off the bench that have contributed. They still only played 8 players last night. So they were going a little bit deeper earlier in the tournament. But once it's gotten to the more difficult matchups against Duke and against Virginia, they've shortened that bench again. So, I mean, look, Carolina, I think that's got to be one of their main focuses, is off of misses, off of turnovers, run, get out in space. You're really, really good at it to begin with. I mean, your guards really thrive when you do it. Your big men are more than capable of running the floor. And as you mentioned, a guy like DJ Burns, that's what you want to do when he is on the floor, because he struggles to keep up as is during the regular season when you have days off in between games. Now, especially, I mean, him more than anybody playing the 5th game in 5 days, you'd imagine he's starting to get worn down. So, Carolina, that should be one of the biggest things that is hammered into them coming into this game. And they should have the legs to be able to do it, with this only being their 3rd game in 3 days.
Yeah, no, they definitely enter this game fresher on the fact of, this is only their 3rd game in 3 days, and they haven't had to go to overtime to win a game. And that's something that for State, like, again, that they're happy about the win because they're still playing. But it did take a little bit more out of the tank. So let's get into our discussion topic before we give our keys to the game and pick the game. I believe this is the first time these two teams have met in the ACC tournament since 2012. And that was in the semifinals in Atlanta. Carolina would lose in the final that year to Florida State. This year, the tournament is being played in Washington, D.C. for some ungodly reason. And this has been a fantastic ACC tournament. Like, you have a team vying for history to be the first team to win 5 games in 5 days. You look at the games last night. I mean, they were phenomenal games. We talk about how special it is to play, in the semifinals at the ACC tournament. The only more special scene is playing in the final of the ACC tournament. But with this tournament now producing, a local in-state rivalry, the only thing that I could think about is how much better this would be if the tournament was being played in its rightful home, or in its rightful home state of North Carolina. We know the tournament's coming back to the Tar Heel State starting next year. The next 3 years, it'll be in either Charlotte or in Greensboro. When you look at this matchup and look at it from a fan perspective, and you look at the history and the tradition of this rivalry, you got to remember that Carolina and Duke have played the most top 10 matchups of all time. Carolina and State have played the second most top 10 matchups of all time. Carolina and Duke have played the most ACC tournament finals of all time. Carolina and State have played the second most ACC tournament finals of all time. Like, imagine if this game was being played where the tournament should be played. It would be a great scene for the conference. And it's I come away looking at it and saying the ACC continues to miss the mark by not putting their conference tournament where it should be. The Big East hasn't left New York. The SEC has its rightful home in Nashville. The ACC is the only conference tournament that has tried to travel to all these places to accommodate all of its conferences. It's going to be a special scene tonight, and there's going to be a great energy, a great buzz. But it wouldn't be the same as if this game was being played in the Greensboro Coliseum or in the Spectrum Center in Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like if Virginia had ended up winning, people would make the argument that the environment would be great because Virginia is one of the close. I think they actually are the closest school to Washington, D.C. So, I mean, look, I'll say this. Would I like it to be in Greensboro or Charlotte? Of course. I think that's the rightful place that it should be, as in the state of North Carolina, because it's sort of the center of the conference. And you bring up a great point. You know, the Big East tournament has never left MSG, and it's iconic. It's, you know, something that I think everybody looks forward to. And I mean, my thing is like, okay, if the ACC wants to be the conference that moves things around, well, then why aren't you doing it with the football championship game? You keep that in the same place every single year. It's in the same stadium. So why wouldn't you do the same thing in basketball? And you don't even have to do the same thing in basketball. You can move it around. I mean, hell, even if you wanted to, I know it's the home venue of one of the teams in your conference, but you could even put it in PNC Arena as well, and then have 3 different locations that you play it within the state that are, you know, prominent venues in the state of North Carolina. The thing is that I will say the way I'm looking at it with this tournament is at least this is a place that has some sort of history. You know, DC has been, you know, hosting, or the DC area at least has been hosting conference tournaments on and off for the ACC since 1976. This is not like when they were in Brooklyn, which again, I'm a dude that's, you know, family is from New York. I was there very briefly in my early life. But I love New York. There is no way this tournament should ever be played in New York ever again. It should not even come remotely close to that state. This is, you know, probably as far north as I would ever want it to go. But I think, you know, in the next few years, we're going to see what should be happening, which is the rotation between the Spectrum Center and Greensboro. So I think, you know, as much as we can get fired up about this, if you're someone that hates Washington, D.C. as well and the location, the thing is that the conference, one of the few things that they've done right here under Jim Phillips, they are actually going to be going back to what they should be doing, which is rotating between Charlotte and Greensboro starting next year. The unfortunate thing is we don't know how much longer the conference has. It seems like, you know, it's on life support because of football, of course. And, you know, I think that's the only thing, but they're doing the right thing, at least on the way out.
I just hate Jim Phillips. Man, I hate poor leadership. And tonight's going to be fun. And when we get into the moment, I'll forget that they're playing in, you know, the nation's capital.
I mean, look, the other thing is like I said earlier, there are going to be a lot of fans from both sides. Like, state fans have traveled up there as they've started to realize this is a true run. And for Carolina, I mean, you said it, you know, you were saying it to me yesterday when we were talking about the game afterwards before we went on live. You know, Carolina fans are everywhere, man. Like, you were a little surprised at how big the crowd was in terms of Carolina fans on Thursday. And I mean, look, at this point, Carolina's the biggest national brand in college basketball. And there are so many alumni groups like Washington, D.C. I'm assuming that there are just a ton of Tar Heel alumni that live in it. It's a huge city. So it's hard not to think that there are a lot of Tar Heel fans that are there, and they have shown up. So I think it's going to be a great environment. I think it'll probably be noticeable on TV. It wouldn't be nearly as crazy as if it was in the state of North Carolina, don't get me wrong, but I do think it will still be a really solid environment, and it'll create a pretty special moment for whoever wins it in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not surprising that state fans have made the travel up to Washington, D.C. They kind of fit in with the politicians that run that area, so maybe they can just stay there after they get beat tonight. Let's get into our keys to the game. They're kind of similar to what they were the last time they played. The first thing is Carolina's got to limit DJ Horn. You go back to his first half against Carolina 2 weeks ago, he was the best player on the court. I think he had like 16 first half points that afternoon as he helped State build that 8-point lead. I think you'll see a better effort out of the gate from Carolina defensively, but if not, I mean, we've seen this dude. Like when he gets hot, he can score it as well as anybody in this league can do it. I mean, I think he over the back half of the ACC schedule, he had like 7 20-point games or 7 25-point games, like kind of like RJ, man. Whenever he gets cooking, he can just fill it up. And like RJ last night, it was a methodical performance, but he scored 25 points. So it's going to be a fun guard matchup, but it's got to be one that Carolina takes seriously. Like I said, they're hot, they're confident, they believe that fate and destiny after all these years is on their side. And so that's got to be the first thing Carolina does. We talk about guard play this time of the year. Carolina's got to limit him. You're not going to take him away. He's too good. But you got to make Jaden Taylor, you got to make O'Connell, you got to make those guys make plays on the perimeter and not let DJ Horn beat you one-on-one.
Well, yeah, although Jaden Taylor is a guy that you probably want to contain a little bit as well, considering he had 22 in the first matchup, 12 in that first half as well. I think it's really, yes, Horn is the guy that you want to limit. Make other guys beat you, especially because I think at that point you're going to see some of the fatigue start to set in. Remember, Horn was a guy who didn't play in the first game with that hip flexor. So he's going to be a little bit fresher than the other guys around him. So if you make these other guys have to carry the load, that could really work out well for you. But I mean, the thing most important in this matchup is do not let these guards get where they want to go. In the first half of last night's game against Pittsburgh, look, you took away Blake Hinson, you took away Ish Leggett. That was great. But you were letting Bub Carrington get to his spots. And that's something that we've seen at times from this team defensively when they've had some of those poor defensive halves, is you let these scoring guards, these guys that are bigger than your guards, get to their spots and shoot over them. That's the thing that you've got to avoid today. So to me, I think that's where you really have to turn things up defensively. And that's where a guy like Seth Trimble can really come in handy. If he can go out there, shut down one of those guards, I would prefer they put him on Horn, then you have a chance, I think, to, shut down this backcourt. I say, Seth Trimble. I mean, go back to the first matchup. Who was the guy that Carolina put on DJ Horn that completely changed everything? It was Cormac Ryan. And then you combine the fire that he's going to bring. Look, him, Harrison Ingram, those guys are going to be cranked up for this game. I mean, they were cranked for last night's game against Pittsburgh. And there isn't nearly the vitriol for Pittsburgh that there is for NC State, even though there is some for Pittsburgh. So those guys are going to be ready to go. I think a guy like Cormac Ryan could be the type of player that can shut down DJ Horn, especially with the confidence that he built the last time around. I mean, if you could have that combination of Cormac Ryan on DJ Horn and Seth Trimble on Jaden Taylor at times, I think that sets Carolina up for a ton of success in this game. But yeah, it's all about slowing down that backcourt and not allowing those guys to get hot.
The second key I have is win the battle on the interior, and it's different because the first matchup, it was Bacot versus Burns. Now it's going to be Bacot versus Burns, Bacot versus Diarra, Bacot versus Middlebrooks. And Diarra is he's a stretch big. So he's gonna space the floor. Middlebrooks is just one of those dudes that just likes to get in there and make stuff happen. And he might not be the cleanest player in the world, but
no,
he does the dirty work, and he goes about it in a dirty way. With that being said, this has to be a game that when Jalen Washington is on the court, Jalen Washington holds his own. This can't be a game where when he's giving Bacot his rest, he's getting bodied, he's getting bullied. And look, to his credit, I thought he played tough as heck last night. There were some plays he made offensively in that second half that were really impressive. It's why we're all excited about him being the big man of the future going in to next year. You go back to last week at Duke where he had the dunk over 3 guys. Like you've seen him at different times play big and play to his size and play with his length and everything. That's got to be the case tonight, man. This has to be a game where, you mentioned Cormac and Ingram being ready to go. Do we know Armando Bacot's going to want to play big? He's going to want to play well. This is a Carolina lifer. With that being said, he hates NC State. He's going to be motivated to put his best foot forward against the Wolfpack. But with the emergence of the guys around DJ Burns inside, he's going to need some help. And so that means Jalen Washington needs to come and be a big part of what Carolina does because he has to impact the game in the 8 to 12 minutes he'll probably play later this evening.
Well, I mean, look, those 2 big guys for sure, and those are your traditional bigs that have to affect the game. But this is where you need Harrison Ingram to be Harrison Ingram that we've seen at times this year. You need him to play well defensively because this is going to be the thing. And I think this may actually work out a little bit better for Carolina, although the way that Bacot's been playing defensively in this tournament, I think he's capable of handling Diarra, but there'll be a lot of I've seen it more and more as this tournament has gone along, where State is playing Burns and Diarra together. And so that means that to me, there's absolutely no way you can't put anybody else on Burns except Bacot. That's the only guy that can really handle him. If you have to at times that we've seen it, but Jalen Washington is the only other guy that you even risk putting on him. And even that is asking a lot from Jalen Washington. So this is where Harrison Ingram going against Diarra, it might actually work out for you. Now, the thing is, he's got to bring it on the glass because Diarra sure has in this tournament. He has been tremendous on the glass. Wasn't nearly as good last night as he was in the other 2 matchups. You wonder if that's a guy that's starting to get a little fatigued, but he still had 12 rebounds. I mean, the first 2 games, he was unstoppable there. I mean, he had 16 in the first, and I think he may have had 16 in the second, or it might have been 14. But still, that this is a team that is starting to feel themselves a little bit rebounding wise. And so, yeah, you got to bring it. The thing is, with Ben Middlebrooks, he's a guy that's going to come in behind DJ Burns. So, yeah, that's a guy that, sort of changes things just a little bit. But offensive rebounding wise, he's better than Burns in terms of ripping down offensive rebounds. That's really the thing that he does best. Rebounds well overall, but especially on that offensive glass. So Carolina's got to be ready for that. But, yeah, it's about all those guys. Jalen Withers has to continue to show up on the glass as well. And if those guys are ready to go and ready to rebound at a high level, I think they'll be able to compete with State. The thing to remember is that DJ Burns is gonna score. He's for a guy of that size, he is incredibly talented. It's just about, to me, can you limit the other guys down there? If Diarra doesn't really do a whole lot, if Middlebrooks has a quiet night, I think you've got a chance to win this game and potentially win it going away if you can dominate inside like we've seen Carolina do the first 2 games here in Washington, D.C.
The last key to the game is, to me, I think might be as important as anything. And this has to be a game where Carolina controls the tempo and dictates the tempo. And this is a game where I want to see Carolina as aggressively as they've been all season long look to run. If I'm Hubert Davis, I come out and I full court press immediately, and I get this game sped up because I want to figure out just how quickly they're going to wear down. At this point, look, adrenaline can carry you, and it probably carried them last night. But now it's the 5th game in 5 days. That game didn't finish up till what? It was midnight-ish or later.
Yes.
So less than 24 hours, you're back on the basketball court playing once again. Heavy legs are going to be there. Fatigue is going to set in. So you need to take the advantage of that and realize that you're fresher. It's why Thursday was so important because no starter played more than 30 minutes. Yeah, you had to play your guys a little bit last night, but they're not as worn down as they could have been. They're not as worn down as State was and is. And this has to be rebounding, like you running off of misses, running off makes. And like I said, man, getting that full court press and speed this game up because I feel like if you do that and you talk about winning and going away, Carolina can wear State down. And there's a very good chance State could be lifeless and legless by halftime if you play with that type of pressure and the type of tempo like we've seen you play in the Duke games. Like you bring that energy, that effort, there's a very good chance you can run State out of the gym. And so I want to see that version of Carolina tonight, that relentless pressure on the ball, relentless energy, and looking to run as early and as often as possible because I find it hard to believe that State could hold up for the 5th time in 5 days over the course of 40 minutes.
Yeah, and look, will they full court press the entire game or something like that? No, you won't see that. But I think what you said is really interesting. Hit them with it right out of the gate. And to me, it's just about being strategic with it because there's going to be parts and portions of the game where, look, if you go on a mini 4-0 run, start pressuring the ball. Let's see if you can create a turnover and get out in space and really start to wear this team down. But yeah, I'd love to see that. The biggest thing is you've got to be aggressive at forcing turnovers, which we've seen, here really since the second half of the last matchup against them. Carolina's aggression level is turned back up. Their hands are in the passing lane. Even before that, to be fair, you go back to that Miami game and Carolina did a great job in the paint of getting their hands on just about everything that was going inside. It was just it couldn't defend beyond the 3-point line. So, Carolina, they've done the things they need to do to create turnovers for the majority of the season. If they can force them in this game, if they can rebound at the level that we know they're capable of, they've proven it to us now. That they are one of the best rebounding teams in the entire country. You need to look like that tonight. Because State's that's an area that they have thrived off of in this tournament. If you rebound well, especially off of misses, especially off of now I'm thrown off because of course you have to miss to be able to get a rebound. But if you can get those rebounds off of some of those short looks that State is going to have, even to me, we've talked about it all year. Some of the times where teams have had great offensive rebounding nights against Carolina are when they are throwing up a bunch of threes and getting those long rebounds. That's where you need your guards to step up. If Carolina can get those long rebounds and really push the pace against State, not give them a chance to reset at all, then I think Carolina is – they're going to be able to run this team out of the gym because, yeah, they're a team that's not built great stamina-wise, State is, but especially in this game where that second half, you're going to start to see them wear down. And that's also an area, if you don't want to throw it out there right out of the gate like you said, then it makes sense. But I'd like to see it starting the second half where the fatigue is really going to start to settle in for them. Throw that full court pressure at them a little bit. Throw Seth Trimble out there, right as they cross that half court line, right in the face of whoever has it in their hands at that time, and really make them fight for everything that they're going to get on the offensive end of the floor. If they can do that and really crank up that tempo, State is going to be in some big trouble.
Carolina enters with an 84.4% chance to win the game according to ESPN's matchup predictor. And according to ESPN Bet, they are an 8.5-point favorite in tonight's ACC Tournament final. Who wins the game and why?
I think Carolina wins the game. I think fatigue will set in here for State. And I think it's because of what we just talked about there at the end. I think that this coaching staff, and these guys that are on the floor are smart enough to know as well that this is a team that if you can get out and run with, they are not going to be able to keep up. And it's weird because in the regular season matchups, you knew that State was somewhat capable. Their guards were capable of at least getting out and running a little bit. This, I don't think, will be the case in this game. So I think Carolina pushes it there. And like I said earlier, I think that this is a game that you'll see the supporting cast step up, because so far in this tournament, I mean, look, guys had their moments the other day against Florida State. Cormac Ryan scored 14, so he was definitely a guy that was helping. But in terms of offensive production, you have not seen a big night from Elliot Cadeau. You have not seen a big night from Harrison Ingram. I think both of those guys, as well as Cormac coming off the performance that he had last night, I think they're going to be motivated to come out and put together a really strong performance for Carolina on that end of the floor. I think inside, State will give Carolina some trouble at times, because the way that Diarra and Middlebrooks have been rebounding, I think this will be a pretty competitive back and forth on the glass at times. But I think when it matters the most, we've seen, Carolina in some of the games down the stretch of the season where rebounding battles have been close, but when they need to get the rebounds late, they do. I think Carolina will do that again. And I think RJ Davis will continue to be the clutch player that we've seen him be down the stretch of games for the last year and a half. Look, I think State hangs around for a while, but you said that line is 8.5. I'm going to go confident. I think Carolina covers that, and I think Carolina wins the ACC tournament title.
Yep, I'm with you. I think Carolina wins. I think they won't have a hard time getting up for this. It's a tournament final. It's against their rival. And Armando Bacon and RJ Davis had talked. They've outwardly talked about how important it is to them to win an ACC tournament. And even though we don't value it as much as we did in the 60s and the 70s or the 80s, it does mean a lot. And we've gone 8 years without one, and it would feel nice to have an ACC regular season title hanging in the Smith Center rafters, along with an ACC tournament title. And so I think Carolina plays maybe the best game they've played all tournament long. I know they played really well the other night against Florida State, but that was a game where Carolina was able to put it away early. I don't know if Carolina will blow NC State out, but I think they're going to play just an all-around great game. I think they're ready for the moment. They have a look in their eye that they know what's on the line, what's at stake, and what it means to win this time of the month. And so I think State's fairy tale ride comes to an end, and Carolina earns their third win over the Wolfpack and claim their 19th ACC tournament title. Well, no matter what happens, we'll have you covered HeelToughBlog.com. The preview of the game will be up shortly after we finish right here on the podcast side of things. And, of course, we'll be back later tonight writing the recap of the game as Carolina will look to, as I mentioned, to win their 19th ACC tournament title. And then tomorrow we'll have you covered with Selection Sunday as we'll find out Carolina's eventual seed number, their bracket, all that fun stuff. So make sure you're checking the website every single day, HeelToughBlog.com. We're previewing and recapping every game as Carolina's made their way through the tournament. Any news and notes that's broken out as well, we've had you covered. So keep checking the website for the latest on Carolina basketball, Tar Heel football coverage as well. As for the podcast, guys, you know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Simply search the Four Corners Podcast and we will pop up. We're there. We encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the basketball season. Well, with that, guys, that is going to wrap up this edition of the show. Do want to thank Anthony for hosting with me. We want to thank you for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels and go to Hell State.